Jeez Louise, it's so foggy. I can't even see a bit of my face. Ah, here's my chair. Why does this keep happening to me? Hello, friendos. This is Chain. Welcoming you back to Chain of Commander. It looks like the fog has finally lifted here, so I can talk to you folks on this first Tuesday of the month, nay, the whole year, which means it's time for our first deck tech of 2021. And you know, what better way to start out than with a deck of a commander that virtually nobody is playing, Questing Beast. Questing Beast is 2 green for a legendary creature beast. He's a 4/4. He has Vigilance, Death Touch, Haste, but that's not all. He can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. But that's not all. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. But that's not all. Whenever a Questing Beast does combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. But that's not... Okay, actually, that does seem to be all of it. But that's still a lot of words to work with. But there's really only one of those lines that we really care about, and that is the combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And we'll go a little bit more into how we take advantage of that a little bit later. But before we get into this list, I do ask if you folks think of any cool or spicy cards that you think would go into a great Questing Beast deck. Definitely comment below. I'd love to hear from you folks. Maybe we can tweak into this list a bit more to make it something really special. That said, let's get into this list where I start all my lists at the ramp. Being in mono green, we have plenty of ramp options to work with. So we start with Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and Sentinel Hierophant. So here's a dork, there's a dork, everything's a dork. Then we move on to Azusa Lost But Seeking, who lets us play a couple extra lands per turn. We got some creatures that help get some extra lands on the battlefield, and Secure Tribe Elder, which can be sacked to get one out of our deck. Wood Elves, which when it enters can grab us a forest from the deck. And Cavalier of Thorns, which when it enters can look at our top 5 and put a land among them onto the battlefield. We also have just general ramp spells here. We have Into the North, which can get us any snow-covered land. We got Rampant Growth, which can get us any basic. And then we have Nature's Lore and 3 Visits, both of which can just get us a forest from our deck. Then we have some 3-mana ramp spells in Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. And then we have some rocks here. And these rocks kind of operate their ramp a little bit differently from each other, but we have Ronas' Monument, which provides us a perpetual discount to our green spells, as well as being able to buff our creatures whenever we cast a creature. And then we have Soul Ring, the classic mana rock of all of EDH. And then lastly, we have a bit of equipment here, the Sword of the Animist. This can get us a basic land card from our deck whenever the equipped creature attacks. And if you get this on the field early, this can lead to some pretty explosive starts. So, we have all this mana. How do we make sure we continuously have spells to cast with it? Well, there is plenty of card advantage in this deck as well. We have things like Beast Whisperer and Guardian Project, both of which can just draw us cards just by playing creatures on the field. Then we have Garruk's Pack Leader, which kind of does the same thing, but requires the creatures to enter to have a power 3 or greater. We have Lifecrafter's Bestiary, which scries at the beginning of each of our upkeeps, as well as lets us play an extra green whenever we play a creature to draw a card. We have Shamanic Revelation to draw cards equal to the amount of creatures we control, and if we control any really big creatures, it will also gain us a bit of life as well. We have some ways to recurse things out of our graveyards in case we want to cast something again. We have Eternal's Witness, which can grab us one thing, and Seasons Past, which can grab us a variety of things as long as they have different CMCs. Then we have 2 kind of spicy ways to take advantage of card advantage here. We have Beacon of Creation. This is a spell that when you cast it, creates 1/1 plant tokens equal to the amount of forests you control, but then it shuffles back into your library. So getting more than one body out of one card is card advantage alone, but then it also shuffles back into your library in the hopes that you can draw it later and cast it again. Similarly, Green Sun Zenith is another one of those cards that can shuffle back into your library, but in this case it's just an individual tutor, most often getting us the green card or green creature we need at any given time, but in some cases can also be used as a ramp, so we will cover that a little bit later as well. Then we have Nylea Keen-Eyed. Similar to Ronas' Monument, she provides a steady discount to our spells, but she also has an activated ability that lets us look at the top card of our library and add it to our hand if it's a creature. Then we have a couple, I like to call them, they come with a friend. We have Woodland Bellower. When he enters, he can bring out a creature with CMC 3 or less, the non-legendary green creature, CMC 3 or less from your deck, and put it on the battlefield so that can go grab some of our utility creatures or something of the ilk. And then we also have Vivian, Monsters Advocate. Her static ability allows us to play creatures off the top of our deck. Very similar to Nylea, which can let us draw cards off the top of our deck if they're creatures. This one just lets us outright play them, extending the length of our hand. But her minus ability kind of does something similar to Woodland Bellower here, where if you minus to her, the next creature you cast, you can then also search your library for a creature with CMC less than that and put that on the battlefield as well. And there are some sneaky ways we could take advantage of that particular ability that we'll get to coming up. I got a lot of good stuff coming up for you later in this deck, but if you're liking what I'm saying so far, definitely consider hitting that like button to show it. I'd love to see the response, and seeing those like buttons lets me know that you folks are all about these sort of deck techs. That said, let's move on a little bit here into some interaction. Now, we're obviously going to need ways to interact with our opponents as well. So we have things like Manglehorn, which can destroy an artifact of our opponents and also have subsequent artifacts enter the battlefield tapped for them. We have Reclamation Sage, which can destroy an artifact or an enchantment. And then we have Acidic Slime, which can destroy an artifact or an enchantment or even a land. And it also has Death Touch, so there's an outside chance it might be able to grab a creature for us as well. Crozen Grip. This is a artifact or enchantment destroyer at an instant that has split second, which means that your opponents can't really respond to it. So you can get rid of something when you really need to without your opponents having an ability to react. Beast Within. This can destroy any problematic permanent for us in exchange for giving that permanent's controller a 3/3 beast token. And that feels like a fair trade to me. And then lastly here, as far as removal is concerned, we have Scavenging Ooze. You folks know me. You know I love Graveyard Hate, especially incidental Graveyard Hate that can just be shoved into any deck, really. Scavenging Ooze, at its worst, is going to be able to eat cards out of people's graveyards, get bigger, and gain you some life. Now, obviously, we're going to be trying to mess with our opponent's game plans. They're going to likely be trying to mess with ours as well. So we have a couple of ways to really protect ourselves here. First, we have Asceticism, which is an enchantment that gives all of our creatures hexproof and also allows us to regenerate a creature playing 1 in green. And then we also have Heroic Intervention, which can give all of our permanents indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. But remember what I was saying earlier about there being a specific line of text on Questing Beast, something along the lines of combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented? Well, in Magic, can't overrides can, which means if there's ever a card that says you can't do something, then you can't do it. There's no way around that. So, if Questing Beast says that our combat damage can't be prevented, but you have an effect like a fog effect that says prevent combat damage, guess what? Your combat damage is going through regardless. That's why we have loaded this deck with pretty much every fog effect out there. We have the OG Fog, obviously, but we also have Root Snare, which is essentially a functional reprint of it. We have Constant Mists, which allows us to frequently fog. It allows us to buy it back by sacking a land. Remember what I said earlier about the Sword of the Animus getting us a bunch of lands every time something attacks? You can get a nice little loop here of Sword of the Animus, get the land, sack that land, cast the fog, and do that every turn as long as you have lands in your deck. Moment's Peace. You can cast it twice. You can cast it once, then you can cast it again for flashback for 2 and a green. Dawn Strider. This is a creature that lets us turn those extra cards in hand into fog effects. By paying green, tapping it, and discarding a card, you can fog the board, and having a repeatable fog effect is super duper nice. Leery Fog Beast. This fogs the table whenever it gets blocked. So if somebody doesn't want to fog for reasons of their own, they would just have to let this guy on through. Spore Frog. This is just a tiny little creature. They call him Fog Frog because you sack him, you fog. Lull. This can either fog or it can be cycled away for 2 in case you have plenty of fog effects elsewhere. Haze of Pollen. Similar, just its cycle cost is 3. Blinding Fog, this is kind of like a mini heroic intervention in the fact that not only does it fog, but it gives our team hexproof until end of turn. Terrifying Presence, this fogs all but an individual creature, so for some reason we want one big thing to go on through, and we don't have our commander out, this will allow us to do such. Winds of Calcisma, this either fogs the whole board, Or if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, it only fogs our opponent's stuff. So kind of like a build your own questing beast effect, if you would. Then we got Obscuring Haze. This is a free fog as long as you have your commander out. Otherwise, it's 2 and a green. And we have Respite, which this one's kind of neat because it not only does it fog the board, it also gains you a life for each attacking creature. But those attacking creatures don't necessarily need to be coming after you. So if you have an opponent with like a bajillion tokens going after one of your other opponents, and you need the life, you can just Respite and you gain all that life for yourself. But all these fogs aside, there is one mega piece of spice that I put in this deck. I essentially call it the fog machine, and that is Isochron Scepter. Many of our fog abilities, they're all instants, and many of them are 2 CMC or less, so any of them can just be shoved under an Isochron Scepter, and suddenly you have an artifact that could be fogging every turn cycle. It's the fog machine. It keeps it nice, it keeps it misty, just adds some neon lights and some glow sticks, and you're just partying up, y'all. Woo! So we're hitting the club, we're friends with the fog, we're hidden amongst the mists. How do we finally win? Well, the classic green way, hitting with giant creatures. We have Gulta, Primal Hunger. This is a 12/12 dinosaur that can cost as little as GG if we have a well-developed board when we go to cast it. We have things like the Rampaging Baylock. They have landfall. Every land that enters the battlefield under our control gives us a 4/4 beast token. Baru, Fist of Kroza. Similarly, this time it just needs a force to enter the battlefield under our control, but it will give our whole team +1/+1 and trample. Back to that Sword of the Animist. You attack with a creature with Sword of the Animist on it, and Baru, that Sword of the Animist gets a land out of your deck to trigger Baru for you. It's great. It's synergistic. Decimator of Provinces. This is the Eldrazi form of Praetor Hoof Behemoth. You can get a discount on it by paying for its merge cost and sacking your creature, and it just gives your whole team a big old boost, gives them trample so we can push on through for a whole bunch of damage in one turn. Nylea, God of the Hunt. She gives your entire team trample all the time, and even has an activated ability to buff a creature here or there, just in case we need a little extra damage to kind of get through for us. Thunderhoof Baloth. This is a Baloth that gives our entire team +2/+2 in trample, and all we have to do is control our commander. That's easy peasy for us. Overrun gives our entire team +3/+3 in trample until end of turn, so that we can, with one big swing, if we got a bunch of tokens out there, a bunch of like those Beacon of Creation tokens, make them big, swing, finish off the game. We have more buff effects. We got Rancor, which gives something trample and +2/+0, and then if that thing were to sadly die, Rancor would just go back to our hand so we can cast it again or something else. God Eternal Ronas. When this enters the battlefield, it doubles the power of our entire team for one big old swing. It also gives them vigilance, just in case it isn't enough to finish off the board. We still have an upright team to defend ourselves. Beastmaster's Ascension. Once we attack with 5 creatures, this gives our entire team +5/+5. Doesn't give them trample, so we got to use one of the other tools for that, but giving your whole team, every creature you have, +5/+5 is pretty solid. And then let's just go out on a limb, and let's just say, for some reason, one of our opponents has a bigger, wider, nastier team than us. How do we get this damage through? Well, we have Siege Behemoth, which allows us to assign combat damage as if our creatures weren't blocked. That, in combination with the fog effects, or in combination with our commander and the fog effects, rather, means that our creatures, perfectly fine. They can go like a 5/5 against a 20/20, but we can still assign that 5 damage on through and fog the 20 damage coming back and, come out ahead in that situation. Now, before we get into this mana base here, you guys have sat along. You've seen the spice that I have to deliver. If you like this sort of thing, consider subscribing below. Love to have you folks join us going forward, as I do plenty of crazy, wacky deck techs, and I'm sure you'd love to check them out. Being a monocolored deck, we don't need to do anything fancy or crazy with our mana base here. So we have Dryad Arbor, which can be used as a target for a turn 1 Green Sun Zenith to turn it into a little bit of 1 mana ramp. We got Castle Garenberg, which gives us an extra green to work with whenever we go to cast some creatures. And we have Mirrored Landscape, which can be sacked to get 2 basic forests out of our deck. We have a Desert Package and Desert of the Indomitable that can be cycled away in case we don't need it in the later game. We have Endless Sands, which can temporarily, if one of our creatures is bound to be the target of targeted removal, we can use Endless Sands to kind of exile it with the hope of getting it back a little bit later. Hashap Oasis, we can sack a desert to buff a creature. Scavenger Grounds, we can sack a desert to nuke all the graveyards. You know me, I like my graveyard hate. Just in case we end up in situations where one of our big guys can't get through or is easily blocked, we have Rogue's Passage to make it unblockable. And then for the rest of it, I mean, you get like 21 basic forests and 7 snow-covered forests to be targets for the Into the North. But beyond that, that is it. That is the deck that I lovingly refer to as a beast questing in the fog. I know, I'm so original. I'll have a deck list in the description for you folks below. And you know, like I mentioned, if any of these cards here, actually, if you want to buy any of these cards for other decks, if any of these cards pique your interest, use a TCG player affiliate link we have in that description. Won't cost you a single cent more. Will help out the channel. You know, while you're down there, like I said, if you can think of any other cool spicy cards to stick in a Questing Beast deck, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Beyond that, thank you for joining me as we go into the new year. I can feel it in my bones. It's going to be a good one. Till then, till the next time I see you, thank you all for joining me, and you take care.